Welcome into another episode of the Swamp 247 Breakdown. My name's Jacob Rudner alongside Swamp 247 recruiting analyst Blake Alderman. And Blake, we have a special episode of this series here right now. We're going to talk about two commits. The Gators on Saturday night landed a commitment from top 247 defensive lineman Will Norman out of IMG Academy. And now we are also discussing top 247 defensive lineman Kamran James. It's two big recruitments. Gators now up to number 10 in the nation in 2023 recruiting. Talk to me about what's going on here, Blake. This is a big time right now for Gator recruiting.
We're just living in the world of the wild dog weekend. That's what defensive line coach Sean Spencer calls his position group along the defensive line. They're the wild dogs. Florida's had a run of defensive linemen this weekend, starting things off with Kelby Collins, the top 100 defensive lineman on Saturday afternoon. A little bit of a surprise commitment from Will Norman, if you will. Maybe not a surprise on necessarily the pick, but maybe the timing. I had mentioned on the last commitment breakdown, I've mentioned on Swamp 24/7 that, Norman has been pretty adamant that he was going to take some visits in the fall. But if you ask some people around Florida, they didn't quite buy that. They thought that it would be a little bit quicker than he was putting on. And, he continued things off on Saturday night, joining in the class. Kamran James, another guy who I'm really high on. I think he has a lot of high upward mobility as far as rankings go. A guy that is a former basketball player that has turned more into a football player, 6'6.5", 70 pounds of lineman. He can move well. The basketball background, he's still very raw in a lot of areas, and I think that that's a guy that's going to he's got his best playing years ahead of him, no doubt in my mind.
For sure, and we apologize a little bit for the connection there, Blake, in his car on the move, but still we were able to hear the message. And Blake, this is a big deal for the Gators now because they rank number 10 overall in the country. And if you remember just a couple months ago, there were a lot of fans who were disturbed, I would say, by the way that Florida was recruiting. And now they're building towards a top 10 class, and it should be even higher potentially. Just talk about the significance of that. Billy Napier in his first real full cycle here at the University of Florida being able to push into the top 10.
Yeah, after the way June went, I think a lot of people were starting to wonder what was going on. Kind of sat back, hold my beer moment, kind of let things play out in July. Continue to get those guys on campus, started to get some footing and some momentum that's carried into August. I think that, we mentioned footprint a lot. That's an area, the 500 mile radius, outside of Gainesville that Billy Napier has continued to hit upon. That's where the bread and butter type guys to where you should focus, as far as building your class. I think on top of that, I think that the class is starting to get a little balance on there. I think you'd like to start seeing some offensive linemen start fleshing things out there. And, maybe some more linebackers, kind of figuring well things go out there. But, for the most part, Florida's done a really good job of hitting on needs, kind of balancing things out as far as position to position. You can see when you look at the class and you break things down, wide receiver was a big need. You've got a deep class there. Defensive line is starting to come along a lot deeper. And like I said, you want to start seeing maybe a couple more linebackers or, a couple more offensive linemen to kind of fill things out. And I think that that's where you're really going to see that solid, significant balance. But, so far it's been great. You kind of come out of, I always say it, you wait and see how the end of the summer goes to where that nucleus of your class goes. We're obviously moving a little bit more into August where, guys are still kind of in that range of wanting to have their decision done before their senior season starts. So, hats off to those guys, going into the fall of the season with a top 10 class, kind of waiting to see what some of these big fish do that are going to maybe decide a little bit later on. But this is exactly where you want to be if you're Florida. After considering where things were in June, this is exactly where you want to be.
Sure. And the last thing I think I want to talk with you about, Blake, is there is the possibility that Florida could exceed the 25 members of this class. The NCAA passed a rule that would allow that to happen with no penalty. Is that something that you see Florida potentially trying to do to get over that 25, what's typically the 25 counter scholarship number per class, or not really in this one?
Well, you could always traditionally, and as far as SEC, you could always count some numbers back. So going over the 25 limit, it's happened plenty of times. But as far as where Florida's at, I could see that happening. I think whenever you're looking at Florida, obviously now you take counters out of the mix. So class numbers really aren't significant as far as right now. The 85-man scholarship number limit is what that's the magic number to look at. Does Florida continue to add guys in this class to push that roster? Maybe there's some roster transition as far as, after the season, wait and see where things go. That's remained to be seen. But I do think that the plan for this staff and this class is to just try to push the roster. Don't look at, maybe how many they take this cycle. If there's someone that they feel that can help them out, they're going to take that number. So I could see it going over 25. Again, I think the magic number to look at is the 85-man scholarship number limit. And that's something that where you don't really have to pay a lot of attention to it right now. Some of those things tend to work themselves out after the season into spring football next year. So we'll see where that is. But I could definitely see Florida going over that 25-man limit.
Absolutely. Well, you heard it here first on the Swamp 247 commit breakdown, a double commit breakdown for you today. Will Norman, Kamran James, Gators up to number 10 overall in the nation after these two massive commitments. It's been a great weekend for Florida recruiting, and we will see you after the next commitment. But for this time, that's all it's going to be. For Blake Alderman, I'm Jacob Rudner. We'll see you next time.